automatic in that because I'm just getting off work. So I'm going home, and thought I'd try to cover a few more things off of tape 301. Because I hardly ever get to any of them, because I end up getting distracted. But of course, if you read the description of my last stream, I think I have it posted there, unless I didn't scroll it up to that last time. So I'll have to start putting more information in descriptions, do a better job with that. Like just, actual content of, because I'm going to try to stick more to just talking about what Doe is teaching or saying about all the things that are happening in the world now. That it's hard to imagine that he saw so much, that was talked about so little, and yet he had such perspective of things. See, the thing that it's hard to wrap our heads around sometimes is that Doe's dissatisfaction with his own, what he was doing, is a characteristic of an older member. It's a state of mind that they're comfortable with in their discomfort. Because they know that that's a key to reaching for something more. And it's not something that you can generate, I don't think. I mean, you can't, create, well, maybe you can, the dissatisfaction. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to create any dissatisfaction. I want to, have satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction is that old Rolling Stones song that I remember as a young teenager. I would be in the basement of my parents' house in Plainview, New York, and I'd have a cheap old microphone with a little tape deck. But did the trick, you could sing into it and play music with it. I'd be doing, making believe I was Mick Jagger, right? Everybody and their brother probably did that, and the sister, of course. But anyway, so the first thing that was talked about was taking responsibility with security on this tape of 301. But I think I gave the wrong number in the last stream of the tape that I was talking about. But this tape was recorded on February 27th, 1988. And taking responsibility with security was surrounding, some can think that mundane things are not interesting. But when you have the kind of extraordinary minds that give you those shows the extraordinary nature of the older members. I mean, because in the human kingdom, nobody wants to talk about mundane things. I mean, some they do, of course. I mean, but because they're selling something, or that they've got a better widget for it, for this or that, or the mundane things of recipes, and making all these, what I think sometimes are stupid combinations of foods. There is a value to the combinations of foods that we choose, I believe, by science. You can actually scientifically see that there's a value to how few combinations you use of ingredients in things, so that the body has a chance to digest it, a better chance of digesting it and producing the enzymes. We start giving all these crazy things to it, and it just diminishes what can be taken advantage of. A certain amount of sugar, of course, is good for the brain, and probably a lot of things, anyway. But anyway, let me get on to other things that I heard in the tape. And that he's talking about that it was possible. His first response to the idea that next level members could have reptilian bodies was no. And that was some time ago, relative to this tape in 1988, that he had thought about it that way. But he started to think that why not? Why not? Why couldn't there be a reptilian body that's humanoid, that has arms and legs, and a head that looks more reptilian? And that reminds me of what Credo Mutwa said in a David Icke interview with Credo Mutwa. He said that the Chitawi were the name that I guess meant reptilian, and that they had like scaly skin, because he drew one of the individuals that he said looked like those individuals that abducted him. And hit him with a beam of light to kind of mesmerize him. Well, we know that beams of light can do different things to people. You can take a blue light in a certain form, a certain, it doesn't have to be like a laser light. You can buy them. And I don't want to give anybody any ideas, because it can, like everything, it can be used in a terrible way. But you can't shine that on someone's eyes, even from a distance. Depending on what kind of light it is, it can travel a distance that we don't even know it's traveling. But you can actually blind somebody temporarily with that. So so things like that, you can understand why they'd be outlawed or hard to get. I know, because a friend of mine in Vermont was an inventor, and he invented different kinds of lights and engines and little interesting things with, I'm trying to remember some of them. But he showed me these lights that he got that were lasers, and they're different colors, because the color spectrum is powerful. it's got different characteristics to the different frequencies that we see as the color spectrum. And so no wonder why you can get pleasure and different effects from colors, from using colors, from painting, from observing colors. You know, it's subtle, but it's like anything else. You develop art appreciation, you know, for these things that are just automatically here. We automatically have all that abundance in this world. We have so much that we have nothing to do with bringing about. So even if you know, somebody's prone to thinking that there aren't any creator beings, they'd have to actually be probably worshiping the earth. And in service to the earth. And that's the good part of the environmentalism, is when you're in service to the earth. But that can only get you so far. Because this earth, you know, from my understanding and my belief, and it makes sense to me. It made sense to me before it was my belief. And I won't go into that because I don't want to talk about myself so much. But that, you know, the idea that it all could develop on its own without any introduction of change from higher forces, from higher that have, because we're just animals. We're just animals. Sophisticated beings, even though in our minds we can think that we're a mammalian nature. And the only place we get any clues of there being another kind of nature besides mammalian nature, and I'm not talking about reptilian and mammalian because they're equivalents. Potentially equivalents, let me put it that way. I don't know if there's some characteristics of the genes of the vehicles that the next level would see one as being a higher vibrational mammal or reptile. Maybe there'd be a combination of things. Like, in other words, like one way I think about it is like maybe a reptile is really a good predator. You know, so relative, there's no right and wrong when it comes to the animal kingdom, but so that's another thing. That's another thing that the only way we get, I think, recognitions of what's right and wrong in my opinion is from outside the animal kingdom. So the idea that there are beings that are outside the animal kingdom, it goes towards the evidence of itself. You know, I guess maybe some people would say that's circular thinking, right? Evidence of itself. I don't know, maybe there's some kind of postulate you could form to kind of use that as a logical argument by the criteria of, logic that I don't really tune into very well, but that you'll see in the intellectual community. You know, circular thinking is one of those. You know, I mean, when somebody told me that I was thinking in a circular way, in other words, I was proving myself with like saying the same thing, that the existence of reality is proof of the reality. Which of course is true, and it's stupid to say, I think, and think it means something. But maybe not. Maybe that's not. Maybe that's. So in other words, well, the proof of the existence of reality is the proof of creators of that reality, is what I'm saying. Because if the reality that we live in is multidimensional, then how could something that is not multidimensional bring that into existence? And it is multidimensional, from the cellular level to the quasi level. Level, because we know that the genetic level, there's a computer system in every one of our cells, and we can't even see it, and they all contribute to their functions that formulate, organize into organs that have greater functions than any one of the parts, that organize into bodies, that organize into thinking beings. In the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. So there's obviously an evolution of mind happening. The way that things, you can see it in the deer when they learn not to cross the road in certain spots. Or any other animals in that same category. They learn. They learn because they see their family members getting run over. And they think, holy smokes, this is a dangerous place. We saw that thing go by us very fast, and look what it did to Junior. So everything is potentially learning, but everything is also potentially just chewing the cud and not having very many lessons. Because, because humans took them out of their natural habitat, where they can get certain kinds of lessons, and now they're getting other kinds of lessons. What is the lesson for the cows? Boy, these are cramped quarters. Boy, we have to walk around in our own crap. Or we're restricted by these fences. We can't just go where we want, when we want. We have, and yet the food comes to us, is given to us on a regular basis, and we get water, and we get camaraderie to some degree. We get to be with our families. And then our young get taken away from us And maybe that's even good for the young to be weaned from the mother quickly, to become independent minded, even though it might be painful. And isn't that like, T and Do were teaching, and Jesus was teaching, and well, Moses wasn't really teaching that part, because Moses was still giving laws of getting into the human kingdom and getting out of the human kingdom. In other words, having human experiences and then coming to recognize that some of those experiences are not good. Good relative to what the people want. I don't know. I think I said some good lyrics in one of my songs that if it's good for everybody. I mean, you can apply that to lessons being good for everybody too. And humans become the ones that dish out lessons to others. So if humans are acting badly by thinking that they have the right to dish out lessons to other people, so they're gonna, start a war over here. It's like it's like the way that the governments of the United States and England and France and Spain and Germany and China and many others always have these justifications for toppling some other country and taking their resources. And if they can't do it in one way, by like a coup d'etat, which has been done by the United States to many countries in South America, then they'll do it by force, and by coercion, by assassination. This is bad behavior. This is clearly bad behavior. Nobody has to be told that that's bad behavior. They know it is. But they justify it for what they believe is the greater good. What they believe is the greater good is the problem. Because what they believe is the greater good is believing in the wrong source of that greater good. It's wrong. It's a wrong source. What's wrong about it? It's got no future. The next level doesn't see it as having any value. A bacteria has its value for a period of time. Everything can have its value for a period of time. The next level's time span is not the human time span. There's a lot of time in between the things that the next level instigates. The programs that they begin. The overview that they provide. That challenges us. It's meant to challenge us. We can become comfortable with the challenge and not afraid of not be able to do what we want. And of course, that can end up becoming a trap. Trap meaning something that will not continue to promote growth of the mind, except in having variations of the same things. Like a musician to have different songs that they do that still get them off. That's still, they're still having fun doing. And then other people are enjoying it. But if they're not enjoying it because they're doing the same thing over and over again and they're getting tired of it, then they get into slumps. That, I think, happens probably with all the artists and the actors and the actresses and the politicians and but then, the scientists, if they don't have that, if they're always like totally self-absorbed in what they've become, you can see people that start to get more self-absorbed with what they've become. Well, this might be just one evidence of it, is that when you introduce yourself with a title, like I remember meeting, I lived near Stony Brook University in New York on Long Island for about 4 years, and because my stepdaughter and my daughter were of school age, we ended up having community with parents that were working at the university and things like that, and so we would get invited to parties that they were putting on for the adults, but that the kids were all coming to as well, of the adults. So different professors in the Stony Brook University would come to the parties. And I remember this one person came to it, and I was at the party, and David Amram was playing music there, and I played with him a little bit. Going too fast. Slow down. We don't want any tickets. But anyways, the individual would. I remember he came up to me, this person. I'm not faulting him for this. I'm just trying to give it as an example of something that network. That might be what they do, and so they're telling you up front some of their qualities. Professor, it's like you go to a bar and you meet somebody and they say, "Oh, hello, how are you? This is my friend John," or John. Actually, John is an artist, and my friend Peter, who is president of an organization, and Sally, that's a published writer, and I'm a scientist. I teach at the university, a science course in physics. And that's the introduction to you. And what do I say? Well, I don't say anything to them because I don't have any tail feathers. Joe used to call those tail feathers. And that's a normal thing to do among certain people. But it's an abnormal thing to do on the street, I think. I mean, it's, but to me that, it's, maybe several functions. But it also doesn't beat around the bush. It's like saying that we're not going to make any small talk here. We want to talk about subjects that are serious, in a certain vein. Wow, trucks crossing the highway. You know what? I didn't put my thing on. Fayetteville. Barker Road, let's see. I don't think I'm home yet. But I better put it on. It's just to push a button on the car. Still 11 minutes away, so I'm on track. 10 miles to my turn off. So anyway, let me get to a few more things on this list. Though also wondered if it was possible if the vehicles that crashed in like Aztec and there are 18 bodies found, some reports say, and or Roswell where there were 4 bodies, and Laredo where there was 1, or Paradise Valley where there was I don't know how many, maybe a couple, and some of the other crashes that happened where there were bodies. Tiendo thought that if those were Next Level members, for a long time, they didn't commit to thinking that those were the way that members of the Next Level came to take bodies. It was only in the USA Today that you see Doe in that advertisement, informational advertisement of the information, that Doe said, hold on to your hats in the writing. He wrote down that way because we suspect that the souls came by some of the souls came by crashing spacecrafts. So in his tape in 1988, he was very slow to arrive at saying that. That's another big sign of an older mind, a significantly older mind. They're not trying to impress the people. They're not trying to impress anybody. They're really not trying to impress anybody. I don't know how many times I gotta keep saying that because my head doesn't know how to compute that. As an elevated mind. Well, maybe it is easy to compute for some people, but it's like some things I can hear over and over again, and only later do I recognize that there's different degrees of importance that we put on things. According to our own experience. And if we get into a place to where we're putting a lot of importance on things, that when we step back a little bit from that, we think, well, that's kind of, I don't want to become one of them. Like Kathy said to me the other day, thinking about moving energy around and stuff, that there's a part to it that she doesn't want to become what she called a new ager. Because then you can think that the insects, are significantly changing our way of thinking or our energy levels. I mean, you can assign monumental effects from very tiny things. And we do that with the spirit as well. To where, the idea of spirit becomes, the thought of it becomes the elevated part of it. Like I took somebody to a business today that was called, let's see, what was it? Spirit Skin, or Skin Spirit, something like that. Yeah, something like that. Those two words together as one word. And I didn't want to ask the person what that meant. I got 3.1 miles to go to my turn. And I'm going to close the screen. So let me get to one more thing. But he wasn't saying that the next level members that crashed, or the members that crashed, if they were next level members, because they also said that they felt like the lower forces staged some crashes in order to confuse the humans over the crashes. But they didn't know for sure whether, those were mistakes that members of the next level made. Because, something they would say all years ago, they said that you're actually less observed when you're a member of the next level than you are in the human kingdom, or like in the classroom. In the classroom, if we weren't comfortable with being under a microscope of all our behaviors and ways, then we weren't going to grow that fast. Because next level members have nothing to hide and they have nothing to prove. Nothing. They do have things to prove, but it's not thought of as that. You're not trying to prove to the older members that you are something. They know what you are. They read you like a book. I went too far. I pulled over too soon, so I was in the shoulder. Got another half mile to go. But this shows because these are uncomfortable thoughts, to think that, another thought, I'm not missing my turn. With that is that, next level members can make mistakes. And they can't even make a mistake that would cause the loss of their vehicle. Tindo talked about that together. If anybody thinks that Doe was getting off track in 1988 by saying these kind of things. And there is that influence that wants to, treat Doe that he just made some mistakes. And maybe not even thinking that they were bad mistakes. But that part of the mistakes would be not doing a good job in naming or with the power of attorneys. Which is possible that whoever was doing that work, because of the instruction to give some powers of attorneys to Mark and Sarah, so they could cash checks, which they said that was the reason they were giving them. It didn't make a whole lot of sense because they expired. The kind that they got expired at the death of the vehicles. So Mark said in the credo, in the Bardo methodology interview, that he felt like that was like a humorous thing. Or maybe he said it in another interview they did. Oh, it's open. Okay, I wasn't paying attention to the sign. It was already open. Anyway, I've got to end the stream, so good night, folks. And if you leave comments that you might be saying in the chat, I'll respond to them. I'm sorry I can't figure out how to respond to them while I'm driving. Good night. Good day.